Hello, everyone. We are back. We are going live now with the post-show breakdowns. Hopefully we can do this. I got a new setup. I'm getting actually a brand new setup for this. Hopefully you guys will like it. We're going to get a big 100-inch TV. We're going to do this right this season and do these live and answer some questions, Q&A. But this pro show is among us. The season is here. We are starting in the U.S. market now. The shows are live, and it's going to be a crazy good year. Who's going to get to Olympia? Starting off the year, San Diego pro Amy gets her spot. No surprise to anyone, gets her spot to the Olympia on her, her second attempt, because she got 1 point off of getting it at the Arnold, Ohio. So congratulations, Amy. She made an announcement that she's now going to be doing the Wasatch, being an Olympia blocker, a gatekeeper, which I am a huge fan of. You guys know that. I'm always going to be a fan of it, even when my wife got third place at this show. So let's go ahead and go into the breakdown of this show, which was actually a pretty deep lineup. So first, let's go into how deep this lineup was. Now, it wasn't huge on paper, but there's about 17. I think there were 17 girls at this show. I was there in San Diego. Awesome show. Anytime you can go to a muscle contest show, it's an awesome show. But with that being said, it was a show that was in a kind of an outdoor, I want to say not even outdoor, like a tent area, but it's like a fixed tent. It's a nice tent. It's not like a cheap tent. Outside the hotel, and it was really, really rainy in San Diego. So Tamer, being an awesome show promoter as he was, he said, hey, we're just going to run this show from front to back. We're just going to run it in one thing because the girls are having to go from the hotel. Not that far. It's like 100 feet to the tent, but it was raining. So he just did it in one shot, which was nice because I was able to drive home that night on Saturday night. We got out of the show by about 2 o'clock. So thank you very much, Tamer, for taking that in consideration for the girls with their tan, their hair and their makeup, making sure they don't get rain on their tans. It was nice and convenient. So that show, as I said earlier, that show was a deep show. Going into it, and now it was only 17 people, so on paper it might not have seemed so deep, but this show is probably deeper than when you looked at the Arnold UK. They had a top 10 Olympia at this show. You didn't have any top 10 Olympians at the Arnold UK. That just shows you like the difference of level that you're going to get in the United States versus overseas. But you also had the top two. The girls that finished second at the Arnold, Ohio and the Arnold UK in this show. So still a very high level show for a local show. Now, going into it, how deep that show was, you saw competitors that have done really well. You had Anya Nicholson there. She ended up finishing in 12th place. We had a pro debut of Judy San, who won Miss USA just recently. This is her pro debut, getting 8th place. And you had Brittany Gillespie, one of my favorite physiques, getting 7th place. So just to show you, when these girls are finishing 7th, 8th, and 12th, and these are all high-level girls, it just shows you the kind of level of show that we had there. So first, let's go ahead and go into the battle of 4th and 5th place, because this one had me a little bit confused between Alyssa and Ariel. Now, at first, I had Alyssa beating out Ariel, and then slowly I started switching and having Ariel beating out Alyssa. So from the front, Alyssa is very impressive when you're seeing her in person. She looks really great in person. Now, there was a thing. She is a little bit off balance, and that was, I think, what really did what hurts her a little bit from being in that top 3. You can look at her upper body development. It's just a little bit more developed than her lower body. She needs a little bit more roundness to her glutes, a little bit more size to her legs, a little bit more roundness to her hamstrings to balance out her upper and lower body. Now, when we look at Ariel, she doesn't need any more muscle. Very, very good physique. She's balanced from upper to lower body, but her conditioning was a little bit off. So I was curious where the judges were going to go with this one. It's a coin toss decision. I was going for, at one point I was saying Alyssa should be higher, and then after they walked them, that's when I said, okay, no, actually Ariel should be higher. Even though Ariel is a little bit off on her conditioning, she was just the tiniest bit soft. And at this level of show, there's no such thing as any acceptable level of being soft. You're either on or you're not winning. That's just how it goes at these pro shows. You have to be dead on point in today's pro bikini. And that's why I tell people, I was like, you can't transform into bikini like we used to be able to. Back in 2015 and 16, and you could lose 30 pounds and do a pro show, a high-level pro show, and look just as good. It's different now. The tie-ins need to be there. The roundness needs to be there. The skin needs to be tight on the muscle. You need to be round and full without having without having graininess to the muscle. And now, when you look at them from the back, you're looking at those full round glutes of Ariel. You're looking at perfect hamstrings. You're looking at good tie-ins that aren't etched in tie-ins. Now, when you look at Alyssa, the only thing that's lagging is a little bit on this upper outer edge of the glute. You can see the upper outer edge of the glute. The tie-ins are good. They can be a little bit more developed. And where it becomes obvious, and I think this is why I was confused in this one too, is that when it's not so obvious when she's posing, but when they walk, it's a big difference. And that's why I was like, oh, I think Alyssa should be beating Ariel, Ariel should be beating Alyssa. I went back and forth, back and forth. Eventually the judges had it where Ariel got 5th, Alyssa got 4th. I think that it's the right decision. I probably would have went the other direction, but honestly, it was like a coin toss. There's arguments for both sides. Do you go with fullness, someone who's a little bit off on their conditioning, or do you go with someone who nailed their conditioning, who's a little bit smaller? It's one of those things, that's one of those things. You want to knock it out. Don't leave it up to the judges, because you could see, even I'm struggling with it back and forth. I could have won either way. Both of them are the right decision. I would have leaned in her direction in Ariel's because her balance is a little bit better. I do think her posing hurts her a little bit with this high arm back here, but all in all, a great package, and she just needs to be a little bit tighter. I'm sure we'll be seeing her with a win and get to the Olympia again. Now, let's go ahead and go into the top 3. Now, in the top 3, we had Tara, who just got 2nd at the Arnold UK. We have Amy, who's, of course, she's Amy, 2nd at the UK, 2nd at the Arnold, Ohio by 1 point. You don't need, if you need to know who Amy is, then you haven't been watching my videos. And then, of course, Kimber. So this is, now, if you guys don't know, Kimber is my wife. I'm going to be unbiased as possible. I already warned her. I said, I'm going to be, in order for me to have credibility, I have to go into your pluses, your minuses, just like everyone else. And she's like, okay, that's just kind of part of the deal if you're with me as a pro, right? So now going into the 3 physiques, there's a big difference between these 3 physiques. Kimber is obviously tall and she has a crazy waistline. Her waistline is super small. When you look at her waistline next to everyone's waistline, there's not a contest there. She has the smallest waistline. She has that classic bikini physique. It's round, small waistline, wide clavicle base, good shoulders, good hip to waist ratio, one of the better hip to waist ratios out of everyone. But that's because of her height. And so she has that small torso, that thinner torso, which covers a lot of length, which creates the illusion of even a smaller waistline. Even though if you measured waistline per waistline, hers is going to be probably similar to Amy's, but because of the how she's built and how high her lat is and how wide her clavicle is and how much length that torso is, she's going to get that really, really small looking waistline, which looks just crazy small, which is a huge plus for her. Huge plus, especially considering she's a tall girl with glutes. She's got good roundness to her hips. Her hip to waist ratio is like 2-to-1. So great on her. Now, a couple things where she messed up on, it was her first show back. Last year, we said, hey, you know what? This is what I told her. I said, you know what? We could probably get a win if in the right situation if we just keep going. But the reality is you're not going to be there at the Olympia and get top 15 with how much muscle you have. So I think we should hang it up. We should work hard for a year and then go back on stage when you have enough muscle to be competitive, not just get a win, but to actually be competitive at the Olympia, to have enough muscle at that point. So this is her first show back, just a small error. I think her arm placement's a little far out. She's going to correct that. I think that was just nerves. You saw a lot of girls getting on stage for the first time, and you're seeing those nerves. All in all, everything else was pretty solid. She's rounder, she's fuller, she's conditioned where she needs to be. She made some big improvements. Now, when you look at, there was a strong argument between Tara and Kimber of who was going to be first and second. I do think that Kimber wins from the front. When you look at that waistline, there's a big difference on the waistline. The only difference being that Tara does have a little bit fuller glute on that upper outer edge. So what happened during the show was they had Amy in the middle, and then they moved, actually they had Kimber in the middle, and they kept her there for a while. Then they moved Amy to the middle, and then they moved Tara to the middle, and they moved Tara to the middle. Everyone's wondering, oh, is she going to win this show? And really what was happening is they were comparing her to Kimber for who's going to take second place because it was that close. And then at the end, it went, 3, 6, 9 on the scores. But they were having a lot of discussion between who would be winning between those two. Now, personally, and I don't want to be biased here, I like the look of Kimber from the front. I like the look a little bit of Tara from the back on the tie-ins. So, that's another 50-50 one. I don't know if there was enough room for Kimber to make up for it, if her posing would have been changed just a little bit, if it would have changed things. But all in all, she's super happy with the third place. I'm super happy with the third place. Now, moving on to Tara. Tara is looking really, really good. She's getting momentum this year. Last year didn't do as hot, right? That's what happens when you get in these big shows and you get top 3, top 5 in these big shows, like a UK Arnold or an Arnold or something like that. You have momentum coming from that. Everyone's looking for you. The judges are looking for you. You're going to just burst onto the scenes, and you see that happen in bikini where it's like, hey, this girl's looking really good. Let's give her an extra look, right? And you kind of earn that spot. So she definitely has. She got that look. She fits the part 100%. Shoulders to waist to hip ratio is good. I do think that's something that she can work on. I think that her waistline can be a little bit smaller. I'm going to say probably about a ½ inch to 1 inch smaller would make a huge difference on her overall physique. I think that that's going to be the biggest hole for her, is get that waistline tight, get that waistline just a little bit more detail, and that's going to be everything that really she needs from the front. Now, Amy, she knocked it out of the park. I don't think she needed a lot to work on. I will say, seeing Amy in person, and I love Amy and her husband, and I love these guys, but I always want to be unbiased as possible. I got to admit, the quads are still there, guys. The quads are still really, really dense. When she walked out, I could see the striations in the quads. It's a lot of muscle. I know in pictures she is better. I want to say that. I want to give her credit. She's brought her quads down. They are smaller. They're more refined. But the density and the graininess of those quads are still there. There's no denying it. When you walk it, you do see the striations. You see the feathering of those quads. It is a lot for a bikini. There's multiple judges that have said this to me as well. It is just the only hole she has. I honestly think if she fills that hole, she's probably an Olympia winner. It's just get those legs to be not so dense and crispy, and you're going to be good to go. Now, looking at them from the back, Amy wins from the back. It's interesting too, because Amy from the back doesn't have that crispiness or graininess. It's just from the front. The glutes for today's bikini, I would say they're pushing it, but they're not crazy past the point. They're not like wellness glutes or anything like that. They're pushing it. They're at the absolute maximum, but I don't think many judges are going to say, oh, it's too much. But they're right there. They're very much pushing it, but you're not seeing that grittiness in her hamstrings. You're not seeing the graininess in her transitions when she's moving. You're not seeing striations in the glutes. So from the back, pretty much perfect. It's just the graininess from the front of those legs. Get those legs down, get those legs a little bit smaller on I think should be a little bit smaller on the quad with less detail. I don't know how you're going to do that. It's going to take some real work to get that, but I think that's her winning Olympia work. And if she does that, she's going to go, she's been at 6th place in the Olympia 2 years in a row. I think she'll be crawling up on the Olympia. Seeing her win an Olympia is not out of question if that problem is solved. Now, moving on to Tara from the back. If you look at Tara from the back and you know what you're looking for, you're going to see here that the upper outer edge of the glute is not where it needs to be. And that's why from the back, if you look at her versus Kimber, they're having a hard time. Kimber does have that upper outer edge of the glute filled out. When you want those round full glutes, let's look at Amy as the winner of the show as the criteria. Look at the roundness and fullness of the glutes. Look at the tie-in without being an etched in tie-in, a full etched in tie-in. You have the full tie-in, but there's not any etching at the bottom. You see here, this bottom part, how there's just a little bit where it's not fully etched in. That is the perfect level of conditioning from the back. When you look at Kimber, same thing, the full tie-in, but right here, you're not seeing it all connect. Tara, very similar too, a little bit more connected, but still in the acceptable range. But the upper glute, the upper outer edge of the glute is where she's lacking. And when she walks, you could see it. That's the thing. When they walk them, you see that upper glute kind of flatten out. Now, the other thing about Tara is from the back pose, she looks a little bit bottom heavy. Not a lot, but a little bit. And a trained eye can see it just a little. I think she can show a little bit more width in that upper body in that back pose to really sell that. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Honestly, from these three, it's a tough decision. I think they got it right. I think Kimber and Tara could have been a coin toss, maybe a 1-point decision between the two, only because of those flaws. Kimber beats her with the glute fullness. Tara beats her with the more tie-in and the more roundness of their hamstrings. Kimber beats her with the waistline. Tara beats Kimber with the development on the legs. So it's an apples and oranges thing. You're always going to get that when you have Kimber as well because of the height. So did they make the right decision? I think so. I think I totally agree with those decisions at that show. That's a tough show to judge. When you have this level of competitors, it's a really tough show to judge. I will say that Tamer, Patrick, and Brian were there, all awesome judges, good buddies of mine, and they worked these girls. They really, really worked them. They had them moving front and back, walking, changing positions. Like they were having a hard time. They were having a lot of discussion at the table. There was a lot of pointing. There were a lot of like, let's get this right. Let's figure it out. Let's make sure it's right. And I think they nailed it. I think they got it knocked out of the park. I don't think I would have made really any difference in choices when I really spent the time on it. And they did. They spent the time on it. So hats off to them. There was no rushing it, even though there was terrible weather outside and they could have. They really did a good job. So hats off to them. You always get a good show at Muscle Contest. Now, moving on to the Klash. Okay, so we had another show over the weekend, a good level show too. I do think that when it comes to talent, the higher level of the show was in San Diego. I don't think there's any denying that. But we still had a really good level of show at the Klash. Now, looking at the winners here, we have Alexandra, who won the show, which was kind of a controversial win. I think that the judges were having a lot of discussion on if they're going to give it to Alexandra or if they're going to give it to Maria. And that was a really tough decision. It was really between those two. And there's a lot of pluses and minuses for each of them. And I'm going to go over my opinion with them too. Now, you also have Yulia out there who is who won a few shows last year. I want to say she won 2 or 3 shows last year. But looking at her next to these two girls, she clearly gets out-shouldered by them. Look at the difference of development on the shoulders between these 3. It's a night and day difference when you look at Alexandra versus Yulia on the shoulders. And that's really, it has to do with development, but it also has to do with her overall clavicle width. The clavicle width on Alexandra is awesome. Now, Alexandra didn't win. This is her first pro win. So congratulations, Alexandra, getting to the Olympia. I think it's awesome. I love seeing that. I love seeing that live too, because it's like the most, these girls have worked so hard for so long to get there. So one of the things I really love is like watching someone do that. And, you know, she got there. I didn't get to see this one, but she got there. Great physique, a lot of potential to move up the ranks too, because there's still a lot of holes in the physique. I'm going to go over those. There's a lot of room for her to make improvements, and you don't usually see that from a winner in today's show. Usually a winner in today's shows, they're so hard. There's just not much room for improvement, but she actually has a lot of room for improvement still. So she's winning shows against good level of competitors, and then and still has improvements to make, which is crazy to say. So she's got a ton of potential. Now, so Alexandra wins on that shoulder development. I do think that she loses to Maria with that glute profile. Now, excuse the pictures for being so close. This is Alexandra's picture was the only one that didn't have like a full length, so I had to put them all closer to kind of make it match. But when you look at Alexandra's glute profile versus Maria's glute profile, I mean, is there anyone questioning who wins that, right? Is there anyone questioning who wins, you know, who's controlling the waistline better? You know, you can see Alexandra, she has a little bit where she just kind of drops her waistline at the end. In a few of her pictures, in a few of her transitions, you can see her drop her waistline a little bit, kind of like she's breathing a little too hard through her lower waist, not keeping that lower waistline tight, which is something that you need to do, even in transitions, girls, when you are going from one position to the next. You got to control that core. The only time you can let it go a little bit loose is when you're in that back pose, and even then you really shouldn't do it because the judges on the far ends can see you. So so with her, a little bit more glute development is going to be critical for her to move up the ranks. Upper body's great. The shoulders are great. Her lat width is great. She's got a great curve, a great hourglass shape. And that's where I think she beats Yulia too. You know, you see the hourglass shape on these two girls, and it really is different between those two and Yulia. So first and second, very close, very close. Third place, a little bit farther away. I think it was really a 1 and 2 competition, and third was kind of set. Now, looking at Maria, she's really kind of bursting onto the scene right now. She did really good in the UK. Just a great look to her. I love her look. She's got a really good skin texture. It's a very glowing skin texture, which is something you can't train for that. You know, you either got a good tan with good oil or you don't. But her skin texture, it just glows. You know, when you look at like some of these successful bodybuilders, you look at, you know, Phil Heath, and like his skin just glowed with that light. It was like this beautiful glow to it. She has that to her skin tone. It just really shines off the light really, really well. And that has to do with, you know, how tight your skin is, the texture of your skin, the thickness of your skin, and just being that perfect balance to create that really good light. And how, of course, she absorbs the tan and puts her oil and all that stuff too. Now, for you girls who are blowing up, gaining a bunch of weight and losing it, blowing up, gaining a bunch of weight and losing it, don't expect to have the best skin texture with someone who has a skin texture like this, who's keeping it tight, keeping that skin from going up and down year after year. That is going to be something that you earn, of course, God-given, but then something you keep and by earning it. So awesome job on that. Now let's go ahead and go to the back of why this one was a little bit tougher. Now, in position, when they are posed, I very much agree with the judge's decision when they are posed. So when you look at them, Alexandra, good fullness to her glutes, good roundness to her glutes, good development of her tie-in. Everything exactly as we went into the last show, we talked about having a full tie-in without an edge tie-in, good roundness to the hamstring without any separation between the hamstring lines. When we look at Yulia, needs some development on that upper outer edge of the glute, needs some development on the roundness of the hamstring, specifically on the lower tie-in, more development too. If you look at the lines on Yulia, it's a little bit straight here from the glutes all the way up, and then you start seeing a little bit of curve on the lats, but from the most part, the waist to the hips are pretty straight. Now look at Alexandra. You go straight here and then pop to the glutes, right? Look at Maria. You go straight here and then pop to the glutes. You're getting that hourglass shape that Yulia needs to develop to more on that upper outer edge of the glute to get that hourglass shape. You need it both in your lats. You need your clavicle width. You need to have a line that goes like this. Okay, that's going to be what they're looking for in bikini, is that hourglass shape. And that's going to come, if you don't have that naturally, it's going to be development of that upper outer edge of the glute, development of those shoulders and lats, controlling the waistline, working on the arch of your back and your flexibility. So looking at the judges and where their decision was, if you see them in position, Maria is just a hair, and I'm not saying a lot, maybe a pound or two, like worst case scenario 3, softer in the glutes. You can see just a little bit here on that softness of the glutes right around the suit. That's where you can always see the last bit of conditioning come in, is the area right around the suit. If you start seeing body fat kind of creep around the suit on that lower part of the glute, you can see, oh, that girl's not conditioned, or she needs more development, or her skin's a little loose. One of the two. I know that that's not a skin thing for her. She's just a little bit, just a tiniest bit off on conditioning. But when you look at the actual density and the fullness of her glute, does that little bit of conditioning hurt versus the glutes not being fully developed, right? That's where the argument comes in. It's a tough one. I feel like it's a little bit less than 50-50. When you take all things into account, I would probably edge on Maria winning this one by just a hair. But again, I see the argument, and it becomes more obvious when they're going side to side in transition. When you see them in side to side in transition here, you can see the development of Maria's glute and the density of her glute versus Alexandra needing more fullness to her glute here in these transitions. That's where things become kind of obvious there and on the walk of things. So I also want to see more hamstring development. And when you look at her next to Maria, the development is there. So it's a tough argument. This one was one of those ones where everyone was saying, I don't know if they got it right. There's a lot of arguments back and forth. But that's my take on it. It was a great show either way. I'm expecting to see a lot more out of these two. I'm sure with her doing so well, with Maria doing so well, she's going to be on stage. I have zero doubt she's going to be at the Olympia. One of my favorite physiques that's breaking out in 2024. Seems to have some fluctuations. Hopefully she can nail her conditioning at shows going forward. They're probably trying to load carbs and see if she can get that perfect level of fullness, which is really, really hard to figure out in the beginning. But tons and tons of potential out of both of them. Now, that's the thing about Alexandra. When I talked about her potential is crazy because when she walks, things get exposed. When she's in position, it's not that exposed. You don't really see it. This looks really round and full. It looks pretty much perfect. But when it's walked, the upper glute flattens out. You can see in transition when she's next to someone with full glutes that she needs more development, more density to the glutes. And all in all, that's really kind of the only thing that she really needs to get to the next level. So she's already there. She's at the Olympia. So is she going to keep continuing and competing, or is she now going to hang it up, work on that development so she can be competitive at the Olympia? Unfortunately, I do think right now with where her glutes are at, it's not going to be competitive at the Olympia. I think she needs more development. The shape is there. The beauty is there. The lines are there. Everything's there. But at the Olympia level, when you're going up against girls with glutes like Amy and the density of that, and Maria's going to probably be at the Olympia too, you're just going to fade in that group if your glutes aren't fully developed and aren't fully dense and just don't have that size, especially in that front pose, side profile, and in that walk. It's going to be exposed. So I don't know what she's going to do. It's going to be up to her and her team. But my suggestion would be, hey, get those glutes fully developed, come back, do maybe a show or two before the Olympia, get that momentum going again, and then shock the world with those fully developed glutes when you do that. So anyway, that is what I got for you guys. There's another couple shows this weekend, one in Taiwan, one in Charlotte. Kimber will be doing that one. There's Tamikia doing that one. We have Yume's doing the show in Japan, and we have another good weekend coming up where I'll be going over these on Monday. Let me know if you have any shows you want me to cover. As always, teamelitephysique.com for worldwide online contest prep with me. I'll talk to you guys